Before this video starts, I just want to give a huge shout out to my friends Steven and Trey. You can find both of their YouTube links to their channels below, and I would highly recommend that you go sub to them. They both contributed to this video that you're about to watch. A lot of you know, or who are sub to this channel, know that I would do these storm chasing reviews, and I'm kind of going back to that. But now we're trying to expand it, turn it maybe more into a podcast between my wife and I when we both do or go on storm chases together, or just one or the other. Like I said, this is kind of a new thing that we're trying to do. So it's the first go, and obviously things are going to change as we learn on how to maneuver things, I guess you could say, or expand off what we're doing. But I just want to give a huge shout out, as I said, to Steven and Trey. Click their links, highly recommend their YouTube channels, and thank you for watching. How's it going, everybody? It's me, Josh, of J&E Weather Chasers, or J&E Wx Chasers, Storm Chasers, whatever you want to say. And we just, as we approach storm season, we just wanted to cover our best tornado that we got this year, which is unfortunately our least covered video, and that's Miami, Texas, on April 17th. Yeah, April 17th of 2025. So I'm Josh, and this is my wife.
I'm Emily. And a little bit later, we'll be adding some meteorological breakdowns of this day from our good friend Trey at Convective Chronicles.
So yeah, I guess we'll just get into it. So it was a bright, sunny morning.
It was a bright, sunny day.
It was a bright, sunny day.
I remember that day because I had the place that I work had we call it Wingman Day, which is just where we go and we have, we go get food and just take a break from our daily workload. And I ended up having to leave early because I knew there would be a big setup that day. And shout out to two of my coworkers, Maddie and Yvonne. They actually bought me a baseball cap with twisters this very day. And I'm pretty sure that that was the good luck charm that we needed for the Miami, Texas tornado.
Yeah, so. The SPC that day had it was either a slight or enhanced risk in.
It was relatively decent from what I remember.
Yeah, it extended through the Panhandle all the way down towards Lubbock, and I know a lot of our friends were heading down to the Matador area because there was a dry line surface boundary interaction with High Cape, and usually that's your usual go-to. But unfortunately, with us and work and not getting off till later, we had to play the secondary target, which was the northern Texas Panhandle area. And we left probably
It was early. Yeah, it was 1, 2.
It was 1, 2 o'clock. And we really wanted to kind of go down to Matador, but I've always been like a secondary target person, which I need to get better at because it always doesn't play in my favor. Kansas, later on, a couple weeks down the line, Kansas being one, while a significant tornado happened near Lubbock. But anyways, we left. We went through, Hammond area, and we actually saw a wildfire on the way there, which was pretty neat. Or, I wouldn't say neat, but there was a wildfire ongoing at the time. And storms were also ongoing at the time as well. And we ended up going to Canadian, Texas.
We stopped in Canadian and I think we waited for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, we were there for a minute.
We take our dogs with us on local chases or chases under, if it is interstate, within 5 hours of living here. They're used to driving with us. They're used to going on very long trips. They've even done a few Dixie Alley chases with us. So we stopped, and while we were waiting for these storms to look a little better, we were just walking around and ended up waiting in Canadian for probably 2 or 3 hours. Also, correction, this day was actually April 24th.
April 24th.
2025.
April 24th. I can remember if it was the 24th or the 17th.
17th was a significant day, I'm pretty sure, as well.
Probably.
So I just had to go through my pictures. But
yeah, that's what we primarily have from that day is all pictures. It's just
the issue with Canadian is while we were waiting, it didn't look
great.
Right. It didn't look great. It was elevated bases, and it just didn't look like it was. I think it was barely rotating. It was dropping a ton.
Slow.
Yeah, moving very slow. wasn't even
It was
propagating.
like 30 miles an hour, not
Yeah.
even 25 to 30 at a southeast
I
propagation.
think at one point we were 15 to 20. Dropping a lot of hail, but again, not propagating, not really moving as well.
And the biggest, the biggest
Go.
issue is that, like, at the time too, there's only 2 north to south highways in that canyon area. So it's like you either drive an hour to the other side or 40 minutes, and then you eventually going to end up having to come back. So it's like, what's the point of even going there when it's in between the highways? So it made no sense, and we just kind of had to wait there.
What I remember was there was no western roads either that we could take. Like I remember in Canadian, we went to, I think, the airport.
Yeah.
And to get a better vantage point, and that was probably as west as we could go in Canadian.
Yeah, we did, because it turned north. So we turned around. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that now. Because we ended up going to the parking lot where we saw the awesome mamadas.
Yes, we did. That was right by the airport. We actually ended up pulling into a parking lot, like a gravel parking lot with nobody there, and just took a bunch of sunset pictures with the mamadas that were coming out. Finally, it started developing some really decent mamadas, but it was still moving really slow, not exactly propagating, not exactly rotating. So
and we went to the park because we're like, well, there's really not much we can do because we have to play the waiting game now. And so we decided to take Basil to the park, and she was going ballistic.
better let the dogs run.
Yeah, she went ballistic at like all the statues there. She was barking at every single statue. It was quite ridiculous. But at the same time, too, I was kind of not in the best of moods because our friends down south were getting what is the Matador, Texas tornado.
Beautiful tornadoes.
It was a nice tornado. And seeing those photos, I was like, oh, we definitely screwed up. And now we're just here waiting for these elevated hailers. Because if you were there and you looked at the base, it was pretty flat. Like, it was a beautiful storm. But once you got to the lower levels, it was like flat, kind of laminar. It didn't really have any pronunciations of developing wall clouds. It just looked stagnant as it moved.
And when we were taking those mamadas pictures, it was already 8 o'clock from what I'm looking at from my map. I mean, it was already past the point of that magic hour. And it was just, I mean, beautiful mamadas clouds. But again, it wasn't doing anything else other than giving us a pretty picture. So we kind of started to lose hope.
Yeah, especially with me, my confidence rates was plummeting very quickly. And we
went back south.
Yeah, we decided to go south because I'm at the point where I'm kind of like, well, it's starting to get late. These storms look good, but at the bases, they don't look good. And, you know, the cap is coming back in, and instability is probably quickly eroding away, and, you know, the cap will win and the storms will eventually just die. So I told Emily, I was like, can we just go south a little bit? Actually, I think I said I wanted to go home. So we started going south.
We went just past the dinosaur. I remember that.
The Sinclair.
We passed the Sinclair dinosaur, and we got up on this ridge because, you know, if you're familiar with the northern panhandle of Texas, it's not, I don't want to call it canyonlands, but the topographic features ebb and flow. So you can get up and get a vantage point. Well, we were watching the same storm that produced these wonderful mamadas clouds, and we noticed that the inflow. There was inflow. There were clouds starting to be sucked up into it. And I remember, because I call them my dreadnought clouds, really smooth, long pieces. Everything started to get sucked into it. At this point, I think it was probably 8:30, 9 o'clock. Still light in the sky, not quite last light.
Well, even before that.
Still enough to see everything.
Before that all started happening, we pulled off. And
that's where I noticed it.
Yeah, because I thought, I was like, this kind of sucks. I was like, it doesn't look good. And I wanted to go home, but then Emily said, hey, like, pointed, like, look at that. It was just like this small area of, it was rising motion.
Yeah.
It was scud being risen into the cloud base.
Well, no, it was those smooth clouds, like all on the left-hand side, everything started moving back into it.
Yeah.
And the wind, the inflow picked up. You had southeasterly starting to pick up, and it caught our attention.
Yeah, so when I saw that, I gave a little benefit of the doubt of the storm, and I was like, you know, my Emma's, I don't know, 15 minutes away GPS wise. So I said, we can go check out this storm. It's only 15 minutes. We'll give it like another 30 or so to see if it actually does anything, or when the sun completely sets, because we're getting in the blue hour. And we decided to go. And it was the best decision that we could have done, honestly, because we would have missed it.
Yeah. As we were heading towards Miami, Texas, it was, I mean, how long of a drive was that, would you say?
15, 20 minutes?
15, 20 minutes.
It wasn't
somewhere
long.
in there. We're flying. I remember this supercell started to become really like structured and isolated, because I remember back when we were taking the Mattis Cloud pictures, there were three,
yeah.
And then all of a sudden there was one. So the structure started looking immaculate. The lightning started picking up as we were headed towards Miami, but we had to jet southwest and then back up to the north to meet the storm. So, and like I said, the sun was setting, it was getting darker, which made the lightning more prominent, but it was also getting, more and more pronounced. We could see the whole supercell lighting up as we were getting there. We went through the town of Miami. If you're familiar with that town, if you're not familiar,
it's really small.
It's really small. It's also kind of in a valley, kind of tucked away in those canyon lands, like I said. And then you have to go back to the north. I think there's a highway that goes through, and then if you would like to go north, I think it's 283 out of there. I have it right here.
Yeah, because there's a southern split and there's a northern split, and we took the northern split, which was like the most perfect highway because it went into the inflow region of the storm, like just on the outside of that notch.
283.
So it was like a perfectly positioned road.
But we had to go up a hill. I remember the hill because, like I said, the town actually of Miami is down in a valley. You can't see anything. So that was our only option. Either was to go up north just to get a look at it. So
yeah, we decided to go north. In hindsight, I wish we were there earlier because we could have got closer. But I mean, also in hindsight, we wouldn't have seen what we saw. And
yeah. Well, and here's why. So it was crazy for how long we waited, how quick it developed, because from the time that we passed our first vantage point, we're like, hey, this looks good, till the time we actually saw the tornado was less than 30 minutes, I would say.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Because we went through the town of Miami.
It went from nothing to something like
very quickly. We
immediate.
Went up the hill. I noticed the lowering into the funnel, parked the car, crossed the highway with our cameras. By the time we had gotten to the other side of the highway, we had a fully condensed tornado.
Yeah, it was.
And then in a matter of seconds, it went from rope to cone, and then probably to wedge once it got rain wrapped.
Yeah, the amount of like different tornadoes. It like she said, it started as a rope, but then
seconds.
It was getting dark, and it was not in our favor for photos because the lightning was situated like towards the top of the storm and not the bottom. So once we got past blue light and we're at dark, we only got flashes, and it would be like rope, cone, big tornado.
Yeah.
And it was the different sizes were just every flash. It looked like it was a different size.
It was just crazy to me that, like I said, we pulled up off of 283, pulled over. The inflow was ripping, and by the time we got across the highway just to get pictures, there was nobody out there. I think there was one other chaser out there.
Yep, for a solid
no
minute.
cars.
Yeah, no cars. For a solid minute, I think, well, it was 10 minutes at least before we even saw a car.
Yeah.
It was just us and
the wind.
And the wind. The winds were probably whipping like 60 miles an hour, maybe greater. We were getting rocked as we were standing. That's why I couldn't have my camera out, because at the time the lens I have is an f2.8, but it's so dark and there's no lightning concentrated towards the bottom of the storm. Video opportunities was not great, and I would have to like hold on to the camera for a longer exposure time lapse, which with all the shakiness that would occur I wouldn't be able to get any good photos.
It was probably some of the most intense inflow I've felt, and I think that probably has something to do with the fact that you have this tornado rapidly developing, and then the topographical features, like the geographical features that we were standing on, because we were at the top of that valley, and the wind's coming from the southeast. I mean, it was just screaming over the top of us. So luckily, we both had our phones, and that was the only pictures. Long exposure with the lightning. And then I have some video. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of audio of us calling in the tornado because it wasn't even warned.
Hi, I am northeast of Miami, Texas.
Was not warned. And it dropped the tornado so fast. What I was saying, I was shocked by we saw a funnel. By the time I shut the car door, there was a fully condensed tornado.
Yeah, it went from nothing to something
Within
the 15 minutes, which is why I reached out to Trey at Convective Chronicles, who, if you've not seen his channel, I would 100% go check him out. He is amazing at what he does, and he is just a great person, very knowledgeable. And I reached out to him asking if he could do a breakdown, and he said he would. So I'm going to insert this probably
Here?
at this point.
Hey everybody, Trey here from the Convective Chronicles YouTube channel. Let's take a look at the meteorological setup behind the April 24th, 2025 event. We'll start at 500 millibars, and this wasn't one of those setups that featured a big, deep digging trough like we often see in the springtime. This was a very modestly forced setup. You can see here across Texas, we just have, to start the day, just more westerly to west-southwesterly flow across the region, and that didn't change much throughout the day. You see that westerly flow maintains itself through the day, fairly modest at that as well, about 20, 30 knots or so of flow at 500 millibars out of the west. So not a very strongly forced setup at all. Maybe a few little ripples here moving through the flow in the form of shortwave troughs, but overall the forcing for ascent that is needed for storms to develop was very, very weak. That means we're going to have to rely on a lot more of our other features, specifically the surface features, to get the job done. Let's go down to the surface. Now, what happens in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere, say at 500 millibars, modulates what happens in the lower levels, including the surface. So because we didn't have a very robust mid and upper level pattern, not a real deep digging trough or anything, we don't have a very organized surface pattern, at least in terms of a strong surface low pressure area or anything of the sort. But we do have in West Texas lots of terrain, namely the caprock escarpment. And the caprock is a very vital component of many of these severe weather setups in the Texas Panhandle and Texas South Plains. What happens is when you get upslope flow, so flow that goes up the caprock, that air is forced upward, and that can provide for the rising motion we need to support storm initiation in the absence of a big storm system or trough aloft. And we had a weak upslope flow regime that was ongoing during this day. So you see through the morning and into the early afternoon, those winds are out of the southeast. Well, the caprock is generally oriented north-south, so those winds are going up the caprock and they're forced upward. And so we had weak rising motion through the late morning into the afternoon, which helped us initiate storms in this environment. We also had a couple of surface boundaries of note. A dry line developed out across the western Texas Panhandle through the afternoon. So, of course, a dry line is that boundary between very dry, hot air to the west and warm, moist air to the east. And it can act as an initiation mechanism for storms in these environments as well. So you see across the far western Texas Panhandle, sort of near the Texas-New Mexico border, we have dew points in New Mexico in the 20s to the 40s, with dew points in the 60s off to the east. So our dry line was setting up somewhere here out to the west, out across the Texas-New Mexico border region. This is in the early afternoon. It would mix off to the east just a little bit through the mid to late afternoon hours, somewhere near the far western Texas Panhandle, kind of west of the I-27 corridor. We also had an outflow boundary from overnight convection that surged down to the south and kind of stalled out across this region. You can sort of see it in surface observations here. If we go forward through the morning into the afternoon, you'll notice a pretty stout temperature gradient down here out across the Texas South Plains vicinity. Lubbock there at an 83-degree surface temperature with a dew point of about 58. Off to the north, temperatures in the mid to upper 70s with dew points in the 60s. So there was a clear outflow boundary here that was in place across the area. Maybe actually stretching a little bit more to the south like so. But there was an outflow boundary. It was leading back to the dry line to the west. And near that intersection point, that is often a favored area for storm initiation, and that was somewhere in the southern Texas Panhandle to the Texas South Plains vicinity. You can see it on satellite imagery pretty well. And if we go forward in time, you see this kind of fine line in the clouds here moving to the south through the morning. That is our outflow boundary. You see it continues to the south, and then by mid-afternoon or so, it's situated right in there across the Texas South Plains, dry line off to the west, and storms form kind of right at that intersection point, right on the western fringe of the outflow boundary. That became the initial supercell of the day that was notable down by Matador and Silverton, produced several tornadoes in that vicinity. We had to wait a little bit longer up in here. Again, forcing was very weak. We had just a weak upslope flow regime across the northern Texas panhandle. We're kind of removed from the dry line out in here, so we just didn't have that outflow boundary to help us out like we did down to the south. But that didn't mean storms weren't going to fire. You see, by late afternoon, we get a couple of storms to fire in the northern Texas panhandle, move off to the east, and those would become the storms that would produce the Miami tornado and epic structure. Going back to our surface observations here, you see going into the afternoon, those temperatures hung out in the mid-70s or so. This is by early evening, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Dew points in the low 60s, which across the low plains to the east, central Oklahoma, central Kansas, somewhere like that, that's a little bit on the iffy side for robust severe weather. But in the Texas Panhandle, where the terrain's a little bit higher, you have the caprock to help things out. That is a little bit more adequate in those areas. Air at higher elevations can't hold as much moisture, so a dew point of 60 on the higher terrain of the Texas Panhandle, or in somewhere like Colorado or Wyoming, that's a lot different than a 60-degree dew point at, say, Oklahoma City or Wichita. And that is more than adequate as far as moisture goes for tornadic supercells in the Texas Panhandle. Here is a model proximity sounding that shows what the environment might have looked like very near the Miami storm. On the left, we have our skew T diagram, which shows us the thermodynamics of the environment. And this environment was characterized by fairly strong instability. That parcel traces to the right of the red temperature profile for a good portion of the atmosphere, over 2,100 joules per kilogram mixed layer CAPE, which is our main measure of instability. So plenty of instability here. We did have a little bit of a capping inversion in place just above 850 millibars. As you can see, the little warm nose there was in place, but with the higher terrain in place, that doesn't matter as much. 70 over 60 at the surface, so a surface temperature of 70 degrees with a dew point of 60. Again, that's more than adequate for robust severe storms in the Texas Panhandle. And on the right, we have our hodograph. This is our wind profile. It shows us how the winds are changing as you go up in the atmosphere. Usually for tornadic supercells, you want to see a kind of sickle or meat hook shape with an elongated upper portion of the hodograph. We don't really have that here. We do have a little bit of curvature in the low levels of the hodograph, but it's not really all that evident. The winds in the low levels of the atmosphere were certainly turning with height, but they weren't strengthening all that much, leading to a very minimal curve in that low-level hodograph. But that does not matter when you have terrain in place. The complex terrain near the caprock can cause some areas of spin to develop, and that spin can be ingested by supercell updrafts, and that allows for them to rotate and produce tornadoes in the absence of strong low-level shear and these large clockwise looped hodographs. But overall, our hodograph was very lengthy, indicating strong deep layer shear in the environment. 0 to 6 kilometer shear was in excess of 50 knots, which is well into the range for robust supercells. So this environment was very much characteristic of tornadic supercell events in the Texas Panhandle. Moderate to strong instability with strong deep layer shear favored supercells, and we had an enhancement of the low-level shear due to that spin created by the complex terrain in the Texas Panhandle, and that helped locally bolster the wind profile that was available to the Miami supercell.
Lightning was working with us, at least for using, I only used my iPhone for the pictures and the video that I got. That was the only thing, and like Josh said, it was all kind of firing at the top of the storm rather than the bottom, so I didn't get a lot of the actual tornado itself. Luckily, the long exposure on iPhones, it just works wonders, because at least I could spot, we could see the structure all out. And that is the photo, if you haven't already seen it, that went viral. Well, it went pretty viral last year, which was a shock to us because we're not used to having that.
Yeah, we just chase as a hobby and whatnot. When we can chase, we can chase. If we can't, we can't. It's just... And
the fact that I took it with my iPhone, it was really nice to have had that photo shown, I believe, at Summit this year.
Yeah, Chaser Summit twice.
It was an honor because I took that with my iPhone and I didn't think, I was like, wow, that's really cool. And, everybody was talking about the structure and how it's a great photo and a once in a lifetime. And I didn't really consider that when I took it. I was just kind of like, that's a big tornado.
And it was like shown in like photo contests and whatnot, and I didn't have the heart to say it like this is an iPhone
Shot
photo.
on iPhone. That's all we had. Because I mean, Josh is the camera person, so I'm the driver. I hopped out of the car with my iPhone and I just started shooting pictures. I got some audio of you calling in the tornado, but it is, every video that I have is very, very grainy and dark because, again, at this point, it's twilight. It's not even, it's last light. And it's drowned out by the horrendous inflow we were experiencing. But it was actually coming towards us. So we kind of had to scamper back down the valley to hopefully get a better vantage point, because once you get southeast of Miami, it goes back up again. So the geography of it. So we had to go back through Miami, which is... Emily had a little scary moment here.
There was a train stopped.
There was
on
a
the
train
tracks.
stopped on the tracks because the town of Miami was now under a tornado warning. The trains can't go through. Well, we're in a valley, and the train is stopped over the only main road to get to the other side. So I had a slight little panic moment because I know this huge tornado is coming right at the town. Luckily, we kind of backtracked. Oh, what direction was that? Oh, we backtracked back east.
East.
It
Yeah,
was
you're right.
east.
It was east.
Down this little road, which ended up having a road that went under the train tracks that the train was stopped on. So we were able to kind of get out. It was more so just because I can't see what's going on. And we didn't really have a way out of the town because we were stuck behind this huge long train. So luckily, we found that way out and got back. Oh, what highway was that? We stopped with, there was a few other chasers on the other side.
Chasers at that point there. I forget what news channel it was.
I think it was KFOR.
Yeah, I think it might have been
KFOR was over there. What road was that? It just says Main Street.
But the thing about the storm, it honestly wasn't even the tornado. Like, the photo that went viral was because of the structure of the storm. Like, it's as classic of a supercell as you can get. How everything is structured and how everything looks. You can see the different winds at the different wind levels, how they're turning the storm. It's like a classic photo of what you'd see in a book of a supercell. And that was the coolest part of it.
I have a couple too. I have another that we'll put in the video that it doesn't exactly show the tornado, but it shows more of the structure.
It's just a beast.
The one where it finally started to smooth out, and then it really just looked like a big purple mothership with the lightning. But the thing was just the fact that it was a supercell with two others, and it didn't look terrible, but it didn't look great either. And then all of a sudden, it was this lone supercell that just looked fantastic in a matter of minutes. So.
And I wanted to try to explain it, but then I was starting to look at it, and that's why I asked Trey, because literally in a matter of 15 minutes, it goes from this elevated looking base to just a monster with a big tornado on the ground. And I'm like, something happened between this point and this point in that 15 minutes where the storm just decided it wanted to go crazy. Now, I understand the LJ was lowering at the time, but there's got to be something that either caused intense destabilization of the atmosphere or something. So that's why I reached out to Trey to try to explain it better than I possibly could.
Especially now thinking of it, because you're in Canadian and we went to Miami, which is further to the southwest, not by much. So this supercell didn't really move, and then all of a sudden it must have moved into a better patch of air, but that had to have been the difference of a few miles, because it really didn't move, and then it suddenly just grew and became, had the tornado potential, and then it started moving pretty heavy to the south east.
The only thing that I can think of that may have possibly happened is that earlier at the 12Z 500 millibar height picture that they put out, there was a subtle shortwave that was moving through New Mexico into the Texas Panhandle, which probably caused or helped with ascent on the Matador tornado. And the timing of that shortwave as it moved through was later in the northern Panhandle, which could possibly explain why it happened at that time it did as the short wave moved through, which caused rapid destabilization. But like I said, I'm not too confident in my answer with that. So Trey will explain it better than I could.
We also, once we started going back southeast to get more footage of it, it became rain wrapped, and we weren't really sure.
Significantly HP.
Yeah. Couldn't really get a vantage point on the tornado any longer, so I'm not exactly sure where it ended, where it picked up. The town of Miami, I believe, was spared, because I believe it just went to the north.
Yeah.
It kind of curved around, I remember, because it was coming southeast and then kind of turned a little bit. But we don't know when the tornado picked up or when it occluded. But I do know that when we were driving back down to the town, that we were pretty sure it was near a wedge at that point, because we went from rope to cone to wedge. It was getting pretty thick. But then it became enshrouded in rain, and when we lost our vantage point and when we noticed that it was rapidly approaching us, we're like, okay, we need to move.
Yeah, we don't want to stay there.
Oh, I kicked the dog. Oops. But
it was a surprising chase. I honestly did not expect anything like that to happen. When I saw that, that it says it every time, all my friends say it all the time, is when you see that 3-cell alignment, because you have southern one, center one, the northern one, it merges into one. Happened with Arnett. There's a 3-cell alignment. Then the storm, I think it was the middle storm, ingested the 2 or something equivalent to that, and then boom, Arnett happened, and we missed it. But that's okay.
By 10 minutes.
Yeah, by 10 minutes.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about it. No, that's my fault on that storm. That's 100%.
No, I just didn't like that we waited in the
Cherokee.
Just the cloudy, cold, dreary fog.
Yeah, we
should have just gone to Greensburg and sat.
Yeah, we waited too long on the cold side of the front. I honestly, the reason was because I thought like the warm front would lift northward over us and then we'd have chance of storms, but it did not work out like that. But anyways,
it did, just a lot later.
Yeah, a lot later. But we were already going home at that point. But yeah, we were just, it was a crazy phenomenon that happened on that night, because that was nowhere near what I expected to happen. I thought Matador was going to be the storm of the day.
Yeah.
And then
we thought it was over at 7:30 when we were taking those pictures. We were like, well, this doesn't look good. Let's go home. I mean, at least we got some good pictures out of it. And
if it wasn't for Emily, we probably would have. She's the one, like I said, that noticed the scud being sucked in. And it wasn't just
what are those clouds
slow,
called?
Yeah, it wasn't just like slow scud either. It was like rapid, just into the base.
I was getting left to right motion from the clouds it was what was left of the supercells next to it, the 3-cell alignment. It was what was left of them getting ingested, so they became these long linear clouds. I called them the dreadnought clouds because they look like the Star Wars dreadnoughts. But you could clearly, we were driving and I'm like, those are moving directly to that storm.
And the intensity of the scud being sucked into the storm, I'm like,
the lightning picking up.
Yeah, lightning picking up. I was like, you know what, this actually might be something. So, and I'm glad we went west, because it ended up being probably one of the best storms that we'll ever probably see structure-wise that's probably a classic decade storm right there.
I only wish we had a camera set up. Yeah. I really don't think that we could have got anything better than the iPhone pictures, though, because, unless you did an exposure, but then it would be difficult because, like I said, that inflow was ramping. It would have been difficult. And it was moving so quickly. And
we didn't have this tripod either. If we had this tripod, maybe, because I could put the spikes into the ground and maybe it would hold it, but... But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the best storm we got, and that's all I got.
Be sure to like and follow us.
Yes, please like, follow, subscribe to J&E Wx Chasers on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're all over it. And I do have another video coming soon of the Ranger Road fire in Beaver. But that's going to be a minute, so... Stay tuned, like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I appreciate you guys for being followers, and thank you for the support.
Bye.